Hey y'all, Robbie Falk here from Starkville Daily News and 247 Sports to give a little bit of a reaction from Saturday night at Davis Wade Stadium. I'm sorry this is a little bit delayed. It was kind of a late night on Saturday, had church on Sunday, so just now getting to it as we hit the evening hours here on Sunday. But Mississippi State loses this one to Kentucky 24-3, just an embarrassing loss for Mississippi State to lose the way that they did. I mean, this is one of the worst losses at home against Kentucky that I can remember. I think it's the first time ever that Mississippi State scored single-digit points in this meeting with Kentucky at home. And, this is not a Kentucky – I've said this every team State's lost to outside of LSU and Alabama. This is not a Kentucky team that Mississippi State should be scoring 3 points against, much less, I think, losing at home against. Mississippi State should win this game at home against this Kentucky team. The two programs are not separated that badly in talent and, what they've accomplished over the last few years. And, Kentucky this year is going to be a team that wins probably 7 or 8 games. It'll be another solid Mark Stoops season, but he had one of the worst schedules in football in the front end. Hasn't beaten anybody really good this year. So Mississippi State should not lose 24-3 to this team. But they did, and that's very telling. I do think Kentucky has a solid defense, and I like Devin Leary. I like Ray Davis a lot on the offensive side of the ball as well. And they're just a much more stable program right now than Mississippi State. But Mississippi State getting blown out and looking completely helpless against Kentucky, that's something that should be incredibly concerning if you weren't already concerned about this program to this point. And I think the people that are in that camp are few and far between at this point. I've seen people that have hardly ever been negative about Mississippi State come out and say that this just can't continue. Mississippi State under Zack Arnett just looks right now kind of lost and helpless and, just not the Mississippi State that we've seen since about 2009. I thought the defense against Kentucky played fairly well. I thought that they played really good against Arkansas. I thought they adjusted pretty well in the second half against Auburn. They had a bad first half against Auburn. And then last night, I thought for most of the ball game, they were solid. I can't really complain about anything the defense did. There was a couple of possessions where they struggled to cover, but they gave up, I think, 270-something yards of offense, 17 points on the defensive side of the ball. That's good enough to win you a ball game. There were a couple of possessions where they, lost themselves in coverage and were kind of confused and, times where they didn't finish off sacks on Devin Leary. But to only give up, 270-something or whatever yards and 17 points, that's good enough to win you games in the SEC. So I can't really blame the defense. Mississippi State's offense is just right now inept. And I think it's important to talk about the fact that you're missing your starting quarterback in Will Rogers. You're missing your starting running back in Woody Marks. Those are big pieces. Those two guys have started, well over 40 games at Mississippi State at this point. And to miss those two, I think that you're definitely going to take a step back. But it shouldn't look like it does on offense. They look confused. They're running into each other. There's just not a lot of cohesiveness. I thought the only time the offense really looked energized in the game was when freshman Chris Parson came in. It was the first time we've seen Chris Parson this season. True freshman. Obviously, they didn't want to blow his red shirt, and he's also been injured, so we haven't seen him at all this year. Well, now the red shirt rule is in effect for him, and he has an opportunity to redshirt even if he plays these last 4 ball games. And, if they somehow make it to a ball game, that won't count against him. So this was a perfect time to put him in the ball game. You're doing nothing with Mike Wright at quarterback. They put him in there, and he had a really promising drive that was not his fault. They ended up having a turnover on downs on it. He had a delay of game when he first started the drive. And then I think 2 penalties inside the 5-yard line from MSU that were just unnecessary. And those plays killed the drive, but Chris showed some poise out there. And he made some mistakes. If you break down his film, there's a ton of things that you can look at and nitpick and talk about. This was bad. This is a terrible decision. That you have to take that out of account when you're talking about a true freshman playing in his first 2 or 3 possessions, whatever it is. I was not really concerned with what happened in those drives for Chris Parson. I was more concerned on how he looked. And the first thing he does when he goes out there, he's having to get Mississippi State's personnel right because the staff did not have the right players in the ball game. They didn't have enough players, I don't think. They had to take a delay of game because he's out there trying to fix the offense. That's a true freshman out there. That's on Mississippi State's staff for not having those players ready. And it came at the start of a possession. So I liked that from him. I liked the leadership. I love how excited he was to be in the ball game. Mississippi State's down 24-3. The game's, for the most part, over. It was going to be tough for them to get back in it. But he was excited to be there. He was present. And that's how he's been. If you look on the sidelines all year, he has been a guy that has been cheering on his teammates. He's been pumped up on the sidelines. And if you go back all the way back to his recruitment, he was truly happy to be a Mississippi State Bulldog. His family is from Starkville. I think his mom is from Starkville. His dad went to Mississippi State. His grandparents still live right outside of Starkville. This is a guy that was born to be a Bulldog. He went to Texas and played football. He went to Tennessee and Nashville to play football. But home is Mississippi State. And this is a true Bulldog in Chris Parson. And, not the biggest guy in the world, but he looks right now, from a talent standpoint, he looks like Mississippi State's most talented quarterback. He's got the best arm on the team. I'm not sure yet about his accuracy. I haven't seen enough of that. But, we've seen enough from him to know he's got arm talent. He's got great feet in the pocket. His pocket presence is really good. If you look at him, he's constantly moving. When he snaps the ball, he's not just standing still. His feet are moving. He's bouncing around. He's a wiry guy. I think that this guy can really do some things for Mississippi State. He's a player that you can build an offense and build a team around. He's got that kind of personality, that kind of leadership ability. I'm excited about him, and we talked about it on the podcast today on Thunder and Lightning. It might be time for Mississippi State to just unleash this kid, let him go make his mistakes. I doubt it's going to look good or perfect, but this is the time to let him just get thrown in the fire. I don't like throwing freshmen in the fire like this, but he's kind of a different cat. He's a guy that can handle his mistakes. He needs to make those mistakes and learn from them. I think that Chris Parson can totally handle taking those lumps in his true freshman year. Next year, you got a guy that can compete for the starting quarterback position as a redshirt freshman. You have his eligibility intact. He's a player that, depending on what happens with the staff, you can build around this kid. The players love him. Recruits love him. So I think it might be Chris Parson time. And that's just from, 1,000 feet up, watching him last night and watching how, the team was energized. It feels like we're always talking about the backup quarterback, but in this instance, I really feel like this is the best thing for Mississippi State to close this year. It's going to be very difficult for this team to make a bowl game. They're going to have to win 2 out of the last 3 against either A&M or Ole Miss. I feel like they're going to beat Southern Miss, but who knows at this point. So the bowl game is really something that, you just got to put in the back of your mind. You're just trying to find some glimpses, find a glimpse of and a glimmer of hope moving in the next season, because right now there's just not a lot of it. And that was one of the only things that we saw on Saturday night that you could be excited about. So, I think that's one good thing from it, but the rest was just brutal. I mean, the offense is just kind of miserable to watch. At least it was, the last 3 games with the quarterback situation. There's the play calling wasn't great the last 3 games. The scheme just looked kind of bland. The state could never really establish anything. And they've scored 23 points, I think, in the last 12 quarters. I mean, it's brutal right now for the Bulldogs. And there's not a lot of hope. If you talk to any random Mississippi State fans and ask them what their thoughts are on the direction of the program, there's not going to be a whole lot of people that have faith in Zack Arnett right now. And, this is something we've talked about time after time. It's something that was, the whole situation was tough with Mike Leach passing away and finding, who was going to lead this program. And I think Mississippi State approached it in a way that they just needed things to be stable. And I wrote a column earlier today. You guys can check it out about basically, the decisions that Mississippi State had to make when you go back to December of 2022. And it was tough. You had to start thinking about the best thing for Mississippi State at the time. And I didn't disagree with their decision to go with Zack Arnett. And, in hindsight, obviously we can look back and say that this could be a really bad hire for Mississippi State. But at the time, Mississippi State needed more than anything to have stability, to have continuity. And they got that with Zack Arnett. The players needed somebody to turn to in that situation. Zack Arnett stepped in and did it. And, for every person that, is going to say a bad thing about Zack Arnett, he stepped up to the plate. He didn't, he was a guy that was ready to take that challenge. It hasn't worked out for Mississippi State, but, he hit it head on. And I commend him for that. But what we've seen during the season just simply does not give anybody hope about the future. And body language is bad on the sidelines. Brian Haydad and I were sitting next to each other, and we watched the sidelines the whole way. And very few times did you see Zack Arnett engaged in huddles, over on the sideline. I mean, a lot of times he's standing off by himself, way away from everybody else. And I don't know what goes into that, but this is a guy that has, what he was as a defensive coordinator has just been taken away from him by someone or something, or, people have gotten in his ear and told him to act one way. He's just not the same person that he was as a defensive coordinator. And you can see it. You can see it on his face. You can see it on how he acts during a game. It just seems like he is either overwhelmed or over it. I don't know. But he doesn't look comfortable out there. And Mississippi State doesn't look comfortable. You kind of follow your leader. And the leader is Zack Arnett. And there's just not a lot of guys that look like they're, in a good headspace right now. And that's probably including Zack Arnett as well. So, a lot of people have asked if there's any, some people want a change made right now. I just don't anticipate that happening. I think Mississippi State's going to let this play out this year. It would shock me if this staff returns, just based on some rumblings that I've heard. I feel like Mississippi State is going to move in a different direction after the season. And, obviously you'll let the season play out. If he comes out and wins the next 3 games, things can obviously change. But I don't have a lot of faith in that staff staying intact at the end of the season when the Egg Bowl finishes out. And, for Zach Selman, if that's the direction that you go, this is a huge, huge decision. This is a very big decision for Zack Selman. You're talking about a guy that, he probably wouldn't tell you this, but professionally, his goal is probably beyond Mississippi State. Let's be honest. That's basically what we said when he was hired, when we talked about this could be a stepping stone job for him, and that's fine. That's a lot of people's thought process. That's 2 athletic directors for Mississippi State in a row were graduates here and decided this place wasn't good enough for them. I seriously doubt, Zack Selman at the end of the day is looking to stay here long term. And, that's just being real about the situation. I'm sure his goal is one day to be a big-time, Oklahoma or, big-time schools athletic director. And I'm sure Zack Arnett would get on to me for saying Mississippi State's not big-time, but Mississippi State is not a blue blood college football program. I imagine that is Zack Selman's ultimate goal, is to coach at a place or be an AD at a place like Oklahoma. So this hire or this decision is monumental for him to build a resume to do that. And for Mississippi State fans, you should want him to succeed here and move on to the next level. be the best AD that he can possibly be here, make your athletic program even more attractive for the next guy to come in. And for him to do that, simply, taking pictures and making, appearances on the radio and stuff, that's not moving the needle. What's going to move the needle is fundraising, facilities, coaching hires. Those are the things that will get Zach Selman the next job for himself. And as a Mississippi State fan, you want him to nail this right here. If he does move on, it's going to be because he was really good here or he was fired. That's how coaches and administrators are. Either you were great at your job or you were really bad at your job. And if you're mediocre at your job, sometimes you stick around for a long time, and that's, in athletics, it might not be a good thing. So this is big for the Bulldogs over the next few weeks. This decision is going to be huge. And, we didn't see a change made with Chris Lemonis. I think that this is going to be the opportunity for Zach Selman to make a move. And I would be shocked if Mississippi State continues down this path with Zack Arnett. So Bulldogs lose this one 24-3 over Kentucky. They got Texas A&M coming up next weekend in College Station. And that's a 6 or 6:30 game, I think. There's some news out there from the Texas A&M side of things. I saw a report on their site that Max Johnson might not play in that game, the starting quarterback for A&M, who was actually the second-string quarterback until an injury occurred for Connor Weigman. And so that's going to be something to watch, but I just don't know what's going to happen to Mississippi State's offense. It's going to be really interesting to see if we see a Chris Parson come out there and start on Saturday, or if they go back to Mike Wright, or if Will Rogers is ready. I was told, when he was hurt, it was going to be a 4 to 6 week deal, and we're coming up on, bye week, Arkansas, Auburn. So we're coming up on 4 weeks. So right around this time frame, Will Rogers is supposed to be back, and we'll see. My cat over here. We'll see if that's this week or next week. But I expect him to be out no more than this week. I think that Southern Miss, he should return. And then I would be surprised if he didn't play in the Egg Bowl to close out his Mississippi State career. So we'll see. We'll keep you up to date on everything that we hear and all that. Of course, stay tuned over there on 247. For all the news. Basketball starting this week. Mississippi State women start on Monday. The men playing in the Barstool Classic against Arizona State on Wednesday. Then we have a Friday night game for women's basketball and a Sunday game, and the men play on Saturday against UT Martin. So full week of basketball, and I'm excited. I'm ready to see something different than football. I mean, these last 7 weeks or whatever it's been have just been brutal, and you add on baseball on top of it. I want to see some winning sports. I want to cover Mississippi State wins. I've missed those. So we'll obviously be covering that. Justin Fromer is going to be covering our men's beat. I'll be on the women's beat as usual. I'm really excited about Monday night, so I hope you guys stay tuned for some thoughts on the women's team from my side of things as well. All right, guys. Appreciate y'all. I didn't get the last couple of weeks. I haven't been able to do the Talking Dogs live chat, I don't think. So I'll see if I can find some time. I'm going to be a single parent this week. My wife's going out of town, so I don't know if I can have some time or not. But I will do a Talking Dogs at some point, whether it be live or from the back porch or from the hump or whatever. I'm also going to try tomorrow to see if I can roll through the concourse of the basketball facilities and the new updates there. See if I can walk through and kind of give you guys a tour. I'll see if I can set that up tomorrow. So, all right, guys. Appreciate y'all. Hope you have a great week. This is going to be a big week coming up. So you guys have a great one. We'll catch you down the road.